the village, and we are thrilled to welcome you to the Shore Haven that is, as part of our Getting to Know Neighbors series. I was absolutely thrilled last winter when Nancy Siegel suggested that Brad McKenzie might be a good subject for one of our talks. And I said, okay. And I went to the pack and shell, and Brad said, sure. And so, fortuitously, we've discovered an entire fascination with bees. Before we begin today, I'll go through this quickly, but we have upcoming events. We have a fundraiser coming up, The Way We Were, and that is going to be February 18th at the Community House. Tickets are available on the website. Dancing, island, 70s wear, so your mattress shorts, it will be great fun. On March 18th, there will be a documentary, Storm Stories from Sanibel, Hurricane Ian. Ken Sneeden has created this masterwork, and it is not a downer. It hits you in the gut at first, and then there's hope and silver linings as the community of Sanibel comes together. It is heartwarming and truly a lovely thing. That will be March 18th at the Community House. Tickets go on sale on our website tomorrow. In April, on the 7th, in this room, Getting to Know Other Neighbors, we will have the film of the Jensens, From Laughter to Legacy. The Jensens of Captiva, and Captain Brian Holloway will be one of the people who is introducing that. So those are coming up. Check our website. We are coming back. Housekeeping, there is a restroom right around the corner, which you may use. There are bottles of water there on the counter. Please, as you're sitting here, if you have a cell phone, to silence it, do that. And when we finish, there will be door prizes. We have 2 bottles of honey to show them. And that little bookmark you received as you came in has a number, and we will truly draw numbers out of a basket when the presentation is over. That is it for announcements. And now, I am absolutely thrilled. We have the owner of Sanibel Honey, Brad McKenzie. He continues a proud tradition of beekeeping on Sanibel. I will pass this around. This is a picture of Frank Bailey in 1948. In 1934-35, they started a beekeeping business on the island. It was at the homestead, and I think, but I'm not positive, you know, the little store where you purchase things in the little gift shop, I think that is the original honey house, where they kept the combs, sometimes on one side with guests on the other. So, yeah, that would be quite an experience. As I was putting up a few of those little things, Pam pointed, the island bees things, I rode to Periwinkle Park, and I was talking to the gal at the gate, and she said, oh, sure, I'll put this up. Brad McKenzie, he is the sweetest man. And I waited for the laughter, but there was none. She just meant he was the sweetest man. And she said last winter he arrived because they had bees, and he came in his full garb, and he said, I'm here for the bees. And she said, well, yes, I guessed that. So she took him back, and she said he captured the bees, and then drove away still in his gear, in his white Prius, with bees, a few bees buzzing around in the car. That image just truly captivated me. Brad is a proud part of the environmental tradition of Sanibel as he rescues and relocates bees to forever homes on the island. He is contributing to this place that we love, that has been deemed a sanctuary island. Please welcome Brad McKenzie.
I want to give back first to the Historical Society. I'm so grateful to be here. It's such a public privilege and honor. And I think that there are a lot of you who
know a lot more than I do about the history, both natural and people-wise, on the island, so I'm humbled to be in your presence for that, and to add a little bit about the bees from there. If I forget to tell you about the Bailey Rescue, remind me in terms of the Frank Bailey and everything. Let me start way back. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., spent the 60s and 70s there, and my grandmother was an enormous influence on me because when my grandfather Bradley died, my mother's mother, Amma, we call her, became an ornithologist. Just one day, just decided. She was in her 50s, she had no husband around, she had all these kids and starting to run around and grandkids, and she wanted to be an ornithologist. So she ended up with the Audubon Society. There's a museum named after her in Trinidad and Tobago where me and my lovely girlfriend are going to go on a different work venture in a couple of months. So we'll be able to see that. And that's all from her her bird watching. She's written books about an entire winter she spent in an Arizona desert called the Peacocks of Babakivari doing mist netting for the Audubon Society, which is where you set up big nets and the birds fly into them and you get them before they break a leg or a wing or something, and you count them, essentially. And we have a proud tradition of counting birds here. And she lived in Cape Cod most of her life and had a house in Stewart and was very involved in the ecology of the Everglades and would be just as shocked and mortified about red tide and all these other things that are happening to us from outflows as you would expect. I don't think she would be surprised, but she certainly predicted the kinds of environmental problems that we're having here. And she loved Florida and Cape Cod, and I moved down here from there. I've lived a lot of places and tried to do a lot of things. My mom's side came to the United States really quite early. My dad's side, I have now traced back to Africa. And I only say that because it came to me that there is all this history involved in beekeeping and putting together the environmental history and everything. In our lifetimes, they figured out where we came from, and you can pretty much put your finger on a map and see where my direct bloodline, which I'm sure I share with quite a few of you just by looking at you, and close family here somewhere. Somewhere. But out of Africa, up into the steppes of the Russian steppes and across Europe, and from southern France into England, and my family, my ancestor immigrated here, lived near Inverness in a town called Ach, which is spelled just like it sounds, A-V-O-C-H. So that was my great-grandfather. He immigrated when he was 6 with his aunt, and my family has been sort of a New England family and a California family for quite some time. I moved down here 7 years ago, right, Andrea? And 7 years ago, I met her for a first date on St. Patrick's Day here on the island. I came to the island. And the people who threw that party are still her friends. And moved in the next January, so I've been here since the beginning of 2019. A year later, Andrea bought me a beehive. We still don't know why. There are a variety of stories. But I just was instantly fascinated. And what I've really been looking to do here is find a way to do just what Ginny is talking about, is integrate myself into the community, both with you folks, also as contributing to the island in some way, and contributing to the natural aspect of this, which is why I live here. I've lived in a lot of resort areas, and I choose resort areas to live in because it's comfortable and nice and life is good. This was absolutely the choice, Sanibel, after living in Telluride and Sun Valley and Northern California and Arizona and Maine and other places like that during my life. So it's really great to be here, and I have no intention of leaving, as I hope any of you do, no matter what happens. 2 years, the bees grew. And they grow in boxes, and I'll try to wrap in some actual beekeeping here. But this is a bee box. And what I did was, I got a hive pretty much like this. It comes with bees that you get in the mail. They're people who, for a living, create queens from a master queen. These are $9,000 bees with specific genetics. Generally, we've got Italian bees. There's some variations. We've got Russian bees. We've got some other kinds of bees. I want to start out with one thing about Africanized bees. You cannot tell if a bee is Africanized by looking at it. Bees can be bigger and smaller and striped and happy and sad, missing an antenna. Nothing tells you it's Africanized. Bees can be nice and sweet, and they can be mean and horny and nasty, just terrible. They don't generally bother you if you don't bother them. And if they do, we call them hot bees, right? They're just angry and hot. And there's not much you can do about it. And in certain times of year, especially around here where it does get very hot, they get a bit upset when you're kind of in their neighborhood at certain times of the year. I'd say July, August, when they're really growing fast, when it's really hot inside the hive, those kinds of things. But for the most part, we can be gardening right next to a bee, and she doesn't care, right? She just does her thing, and you do your thing. Now, if you have a bee going around your head, and you swat at it, she says, you started it. Right? Don't swat at them, just walk away. Now, they might get in your hair, and then you got to try to get them out of your hair. But they're not going to get you while they're in your hair. They have to get to your scalp. So just try to remain calm. It's just one tiny little bug. Now, most of you I figure, can handle that. But you can imagine all the people who call me and tell me they've got 3 bees in their garden. Can you please come and do something? And I do. And I will come over to anybody's house and talk about bees with them. And if they need them removed or something done, we'll talk about that too. I do charge to remove them because there are expenses involved in it. And even though they're eventually going to be going into my bee yard, I manage these bees, right? It's like renting a house to them. They're free to go, and they frequently do. But when I rescue them, they're mine charge for a while. And when you rescue them, you've just destroyed their house and rebuilt it in one of these. And I'll explain that process to you a little bit. But they're not comfortable there yet. So you have to protect them from other bees, primarily other bees, just like humans. Really tough to their own kind. Not so much other. A horned toad might come up here and sit here and wait for the bees to come out and snatch them with his tongue. But even if you see an iguana near a beehive, that iguana is probably just going after the dead ones that they push out of the hive and eating freshly dead bees, something to eat. Not much is going to mess with a bunch of bees, right? A bear can put up with it when he comes to them. This is also another kind of global thing to think about in terms of bees, is that the store of honey inside a hive is like Fort Knox. It is liquid gold. It is an enormous amount of energy. And we all love it, from mosquitoes and no-see-ums up and all the pests that are in here up to bears. Everybody loves honey because it's a lot easier to get honey than it is to, say, kill a deer and keep it fresh over the winter. Okay? It's just an enormous store of value, and it's delicious. I don't know. I don't talk to many animals about that. I have other things to talk to them about, but they mostly do like to eat honey. So, but bees will get after just about anything. At one of my houses, it's on a nice lake that had a fountain in it before eating. I took waterfront pictures, right? I posted on my Instagram. This is what being a bee in Sanibel is like, waterfront living and the good life. Well, there were iguanas that lived in the tree up there, or were up in the tree. And if I came and opened this to inspect the bees, and the bees flew out of it, a few seconds later, you'd hear the iguanas splash into the pond as they avoided the bees coming out. So the bees didn't really like those particular ones. They actually went after them. They wouldn't normally. but they were clearly, as soon as it opened up, they're like, those iguanas gotta go. And the iguanas did, so they can protect themselves. So I started with one hive. It split. In other words, the bees grew out of it. And this is where I guess I get to start my talk. It's just how bees work, how they reproduce, how they live. This is my bee suit. I just brought it so you can see. I don't like getting stung any more than any of you do. And some people you see on the internet without protection doing these nice videos and saying, oh, well, we saved the bees again today and all this stuff. And it makes you think they're really, one with the bees. Those are their good videos. Those people do not survive without this. Okay? And some days you get nice bees that'll act just like you want them to. And you can take a video and you can not wear this. And there are some people who really do just not wear it and get stung. I just think that's ridiculous. I can't stand it. So I wear this, I wear rubber boots, I have gloves, I have 2 layers of gloves. I don't want to get stung, and I don't want you guys to get stung when I'm in your yard either. So if I have to move some bees, we'll talk about how to do it and try not to let the bees get angry or out of control. And sometimes they're already a little bit busy. This is my handy hive tool. These are my beekeepers here. There are only 4 or 5 registered beekeepers. You're supposed to register with the government here in Florida and get an apiary license to do this. If you're really small and you don't want to and you're growing pot in your backyard anyway, then maybe you don't, okay? But for the most part, the government's here to help. And I can say that from having just terrific experience with the people who come to inspect for me, the people who help with the programs. Bees are livestock. We treat bees as an animal, from our perspective, just like we treat cows. If you lose a cow in an electric fence, the government steps in and subsidizes your loss. ELAP did that for me. It's a government program with the Farm Service Agency. And they paid me back about 10-15% of the losses that I had during Ian. It helped. You all paid a lot of the rest to get me back up and running after Ian. What happened, I keep changing what I'm going to do, but I went from 1 hive to about 50 hives in 2.5 years. And some of them I bought. I didn't buy bees so much as equipment, right? People wanted to donate bees from all over the place. I would have to get, people in Fort Myers were always calling. Sanibel hunting to me has one mission, and that's Sanibel's bees. So I try not to do rescues or anything else off island unless they're, good friends or something, or someone who really needs a hand. But I also try not to bring those bees on the island if I can after that, try to find another place to put them. Because I want Sanibel's bees to be Sanibel's bees. It's kind of like the fiction that we have for all the native plants. The native plants here are the native plants that we call native plants, right? Historically, are these the native plants? I mean, we'd have a lot more Australian pines and Brazilian pepper and all that stuff if we didn't consider, Brazilian pepper is incredibly invasive. We don't want it on the island. But it makes great honey, first of all, very spicy. And it saves Fort Myers honey in the fall for a second harvest, where the people who are trying to make money just making honey, make their money on the Brazilian pepper honey. Is it native, invasive? Okay, we don't want it, that's fine. Same thing with bees. We have this environmentally remote and isolated island here, 3 miles away from shore. Bees typically forage about 2 miles away. And if they're going to, and when the males congregate up in the air to wait for queens to come by to mate with, they take them from about that same air, about 2 miles. So what I'm getting at is that it's kind of difficult for bees just to float over here from the mainland and start new bee culture here. So when we lost all the bees in Ian, and I mean nearly all, like the bayous up here, and some of even this area, the tropical canopy was destroyed, right? It used to be hot and wet in the bayous, right? Because there's a full canopy there. And in the trees were all these feral colonies, hundreds of feral colonies, which I found out by getting calls to take bees out of owl boxes, which SCCF very helpfully and for the right reasons put up for owls, screech owls, right? those are perfect for bees. And I have found an owl box with an egg in it. So what that means is that the owls had laid the egg and been forced out by the bees when they took over. Okay? And you can imagine the owls aren't going to cotton the bees. I mean, they're just not going to be able to survive together in the same box. SCCF, I think, has stopped selling those owl boxes now. It has nothing to do with bees. But I'm kind of glad they did. It's, you know, you really don't want to buy an owl box and then end up with bees. That's not the point. And so, but they're great to recover, right? Because all you have to do is pull them apart and put them right in here. It's really easy. It's not something. So where I typically find my recoveries is in your carport. This will be drywall up here, right? And they'll get through the siding where it's rotted, or the drywall has kind of gotten a little wet and there's some kind of hole, or there's something that some contractor didn't completely fill up. And the bees will go in there quite quickly. And during the spring, and again during the autumn, when they're trying to find new places to go, mostly in the spring and the fall. Also, just in case you don't know, bees are annual. They go with the seasons just like everything else. People are like, don't you get honey all the time? Well, here almost, a little bit, because it's tropical. But no, not normally. Bees hibernate, and I'll try to get into that before I sort of run out of time on all this, because we're going a little bit in circles. But typically, when I come to your house and look at bees that are stuck in there, we have to pull off a little bit of drywall, and they'll be between the joists, and they'll have filled in a whole box between some joists. And then I'll take it out. I'll start to cut out that comb. And this is my top box. This is a sugar box. This is a honey box. I'll cut out the comb, and I'll put rubber bands around this frame. I'll cut out the comb, and it looks a little like this. It's fatter, right? Cut out some of this comb, strap it in here with rubber bands, okay? Fit it in as best I can. And what's on there is all the resources that the bees live with. It's their house. It's their comb. It's their honey. It's their pollen. It's their wax. It's their propolis. All the different things that they need to breed their babies. Okay? And it also has their babies. So, you have to be careful when you put them in here. You'd like to save as many of those babies and as much as of those resources. And if I can get 10 of those filled up, or 10 of these frames in here, get 10 of these frames filled up in here, and then manage to keep them in here long enough for them to recognize that this new house is going to be their home, then they have a pretty good chance of surviving. When I do rescues, you have to understand that they don't necessarily want to be rescued. That's not why they went up here, okay? So you have to convince them that the queen wants to stay here, that the brood's worth protecting. One more thing about that, when bees come after you because they're protecting their hive, we say, it's not the hive. I didn't know this at first. They're protecting the brood. They're not really protecting the queen. They're not really protecting the community. They're protecting the unborn babies. Okay? So when they don't have as much brood or any brood in here, they're much less likely to come after you, unless there's some environmental problems, that kind of thing. So I get them in here. I try to keep them in here by maybe closing this off for a day or so. Mostly, though, hoping the queen stays in here. So as I rescue them, I'm looking for the queen. And when I see her, and I usually see her before I go to the extreme measure of vacuuming them up, but as I'm pulling them out, she'll go and hide somewhere, right? So I know she's not right where I'm digging around. I put them all on here. I don't expect to see the queen. But eventually, sure enough, there she is somewhere in their joists. And I can grab her and put her in a clip or a little bottle or something where she'll stay for a couple of days. And then I'll put it in here. Once she's in here, the other bees will start to come here on their own. Okay? So it's really fun to do a water meter rescue where they're actually in the ground. And I can put this down on the ground and have a little mat or something out here. And as I put the bees in here, and they're just start crawling around. When I find that queen, I put the queen in here. Now all the bees in that water meter just start walking across that mat to come home. And on my on my YouTube, I have video of doing that. It's not the greatest video. There are people who have videographers. I really haven't had someone with me doing videos all the time. I should get someone like that. You can look me up on Facebook or on Instagram at Sanibel Honey, or on YouTube where there's some videos. And also I have Brad Mac Art, which is my art site, and I'm Bradley John McKenzie if you want to be actually just friends with me on either of those sites, Facebook and Instagram. I'd gladly accept any of you. But you can follow me on those platforms too if you want to just follow me or Sanibel Honey and kind of keep up with what's going on here. But you know, most people who start doing bees on this island just do it as a little side hobby, just a couple of hives. The people who have been successful with honey in Florida generally do pollination, where they have hundreds or thousands of beehives and they ship them out to pollinate in California and around the Dakotas and Minnesota before they come back in winter here. And honey is kind of a sideline. There are some people who try to survive on honey alone, but you know, I make about 1,000, it's been about 1,000 jars a year. At $15 a jar, that's 15 grand. I'm putting an awful lot of work in for 15 grand. And so that's not about me, it's about whether anyone can do it. So the idea of having the conceit of, I'm only Sanibel, and only doing what Sanibel can support isn't really a living, right? So we've seen that. We've seen a lot of people, even the Baileys, you know, they had their own stuff, but they weren't trying to grow it into a living. Let me tell you about the Baileys thing, just because it's interesting. When I rescued some bees at Bailey's, they were taking down that housing, the green housing for the workers at Bailey's that was behind the Bailey's, sort of where the Sanibel Sprout is. And that place was really a mess. So the fire department was going to come in and use it before it was destroyed for smoke training. And what they use for smoke training is water vapor so that no one actually gets smoke inhalation, right? That place was not very livable. Even the Baileys will tell you it was not very livable. And I nearly fell through a forest I was going through to find this stuff. I'm not trying to tear anyone down, I'm just saying the house was old and hadn't had much done to it. People had been living there for a very long time. In the back, the entire back of the house, well, you know, it's 2 bedroom on each side in a hallway, so 24 feet maybe. The entire back of the house was a sheet of bees. Oh my God. Absolute sheet of bees, maybe 18 inches thick, comb hanging straight down. The comb at the bottom was dead, hadn't been used in a while. The comb up top was alive. As I opened that up, those bees said, "Oh, you are not doing this right." you don't know what you're getting into. And they came after me all day long. And I came back and passed out. I was physically, emotionally, mentally drained by the energy of all these bees. And nothing like that had ever happened to me before in my life. It was the first time that it ever happened. First time I really got the notion of how powerful bees were. It's kind of like knowing how strong water is. You know, you see a big wave, you don't think how powerful that must be until you try to surf it or something, or it washes over your island. And same thing with bees. I mean, they were really kind of cute little buggers until they really were like, you know, even if they understood that I was trying to do something good for them, they were like, "No, we don't want you to do that." And they drained me emotionally for a couple of days. It was really hard work. It was also kind of hot. And a lot of what the rescues I do are in the heat.
One queen?
Probably only one queen. I only found one queen. Could have been more. And in something that size, you
They
all
would have fought each other anyhow.
Well, they might have, but in something that big, they could be very isolated.
Okay.
Could be. And there's some beekeepers now that in Florida who will use a couple of boxes, of these deep boxes, for brood, and they'll put a queen separator or another kind of mechanism that keeps the boxes physically separate, but allows the workers to go pass back and forth. And they'll have a queen in the bottom and a queen in the top. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense for my thing. And I'm right in the middle. You know, you've got these little guys who do 1 or 2 hives. Then you've got people who do thousands of hives. Then you've got queen breeders, and people are doing different things with their honey. I just do this one thing sort of in the middle. 50 hives is pretty many hives, but so it's more than the little guy, but it's a lot more than the big guys. So I've just kind of made everything work for me and hopefully for the island. I think there's a maximum amount of managed hives you can have on the island. We can certainly have a lot more native or feral wild bees than we do right now. And but there's probably an ecological number where if there's more food, there'll be more bees that year, a little less food, a little fewer bees. But a large number of bees, and we don't have that now. After Ian picked up all my hives and deposited them in mangroves, in people's yards, in the water, and a lot of those hives I never found again. A lot of the feral bees went away too. So after Ian, you all, the community, called me and said, can we do something about getting bees back? And I said, sure, do you want midges and mosquitoes too? You know, I'm kidding, I'm really kidding. But, you know, bees are only one part of the ecology. But do we need bees, and do we want bees? We like bees, yeah. So I took it as my mission to bring bees back, and I bought 50 queens and bees, 150 boxes. And what I was doing was putting these boxes in individual people's backyards, whoever wanted them, for free, and I would manage them and I'd get the honey from it, and the landlord would get a bottle of honey for his or her efforts, their efforts. And people like to do that, so there were 50 all over the island. I can't do that anymore, and a couple of reasons. One is selfish. It takes me too bloody long to get around to all those hives. That also means it's not really that as good for the bees, because it's my obligation to them to keep them happy in these houses, whereas in the wild they take care of themselves and they make it or don't and keep moving, and that's up to them. But once they're in here, they need me to keep the pests out. They need me to manage the hive in a number of ways. So I have to go and see them. SCCF has kindly given me a couple of plots to use. In Helene and Milton, all those plots also got completely contaminated. So I lost all my hives again the second time. So I'm now going to have one field, one yard, and it's going to be sort of near the beach on Tarpon Bay Road. And that will have hives all in the same place. One of the great things about having hives in the same place is if this hive starts getting weak, if this hive gets infested, this hive absconds or splits or something happens, I have other frames right here, other beehives that can go in and say, here, let's strengthen this one up a bit. And I can do it right there in the field. I don't spend nearly as much time. I don't spend as much time bothering the bees. The bees don't want me in here either. Now, right now, I can't, until this week, I couldn't go in the hives at all because it was too cold. Bees wanted about 92 degrees, 94 degrees, something like that, right in the 90s. And they build their comb with HVAC in mind. When it's hot, they can fan their wings, and when they're here fanning their wing, you know, they're on my mesh helmet, fanning their wing in my ear, that's a big breeze. You can stay cool with 1 or 2 bees doing that in the middle of summer. And when they're at the entrance here fanning away, or inside fanning away, it very much is air conditioning during the summer. This can be out in the hot, you know, I got where did I put my lid? You know, I use these metal telescoping lids a lot of times that go over the top. And there's a little air gets in. If it's in full sun, it's going to be fairly hot in the summer. They keep it just the right temperature. When it gets cold like this, they all huddle up. And down here, they don't really hibernate nearly as much as they do up north. People up north have to put bags around this and insulate them and everything. But bees forever have survived the winters in cold weather because they do 2 things. In the fall, they start to kick out the boys. Boys don't contribute to the hive. They have the remote control. They keep their golf clubs up in the sky. And they go up there every day to meet with each other and wait for queens to come by. But in the fall, as they approach winter, the girls realize these guys are just a liability. They're just going to eat. They're just going to consume things over the winter. And they're bigger. I call them toms. When I see them, I call them toms because they're just kind of bulky. Everyone else in the hive is a girl. Everyone else except one is an immature, sexually immature female. That's why we call them girls. We would call them women, but they're not. They're sexually immature. Okay? The only woman in the hive is the queen. Okay? The queen is specially bred by her colony to start other colonies, or really, even more precisely, to continue the colony that she's in. Okay? To start in the middle, it's kind of a chicken egg, but we have to start somewhere. The queen, in spring usually, to start it in April, say, March, April, when nature starts to bud and food starts to come in the form of pollen and nectar from plants and so forth outside, and the bees start coming in with this nectar, the queen says, okay, now I can breed. She doesn't want her babies to die, she waits for food supply. Okay. Food supply starts coming in, she starts breeding, she starts putting eggs in the comb, and the bees that are here take care of it. Okay. There aren't that many bees in the spring because they've died off over the winter. Even in this warm weather, she doesn't breed in the winter unless there's food coming in. Even here, there's not much food. We know, right? We're looking around here. There are flowers. And I have one hive that I've relocated, and it's in someone's yard right now, and it has bees coming in with nectar and pollen right now in January, which makes me very hopeful for this entire year in a number of ways for all of our gardens, for all of our island, for all of nature here. Okay? And that's the thing that I really want to say about resilience too. This island isn't going anywhere just because we get inundated with water. You know, I mean, we could lose everything, right? Us humans. The island might wash away. Short of that, nature's going to come back here. It's a barrier island, and there's a lot of sand, not a lot of topsoil, that kind of thing. But very quickly after these major storms, you've got a lot of foliage blooming, and that just means that a couple years later, you're going to have a lot of foliage, right? Even the bees, nearly wiped out. Do we have to wait 10 years to get all the bees back? No, we can import them. We can help the pollination process. We can bring it back faster, right? So back to managing the bees, or just bees in nature. That queen starts breeding, and as she breeds, she's thinking about growing her hive, making sure it matches up with the amount of food that's coming in and so forth. And as the summer goes on, it gets kind of crowded in here. She starts thinking about splitting the colony. And when I say she, the queen isn't as much in charge as we think when we call her the queen. It's a communal effort. And a lot of the signals that the bees get are from the girls. They're the ones out saying where the food supply is. They're the ones coming back talking about danger, talking about conditions outside the hive. They're the ones who go from comb to comb looking for mites and pests and anything that shouldn't be in there, dragging out the trash, that kind of thing. They're doing all the work, and they know all the signals, right? And the men don't know. She was not going to have to repeat my own good. But as it gets busy, the bees start to decide how they're going to replicate themselves. And it's a fairly unique process. The queen, what they do is they anoint certain cells as future queens, future possible queens. And they feed them a special food called royal jelly, which is made out of the exact same thing that they bring in from everything else. It's just a little different enzymes and so forth. And so the queen, when she eventually emerges, it's just like the Buddha. Buddha didn't know he was the Buddha before he was born, but when he was born, boom, Dalai Lama, right? He is the Dalai Lama. He didn't, okay. Same with queens. They are anointed before birth. You're going to be a queen. And what the bees do is they usually make a bunch of them. Especially if they're in danger, they'll make quite a few queen cells, and they'll try to breed a bunch of queens. The first really vicious thing that bees do to each other is that When that initial queen comes out, the first queen that emerges, she goes around the entire hive and pecks the sides of the other queen cells and kills all of her competition. Because there can only be one queen. That's my other joke. We're done here. Not a joke. So she dominates the hive, and like this fellow was saying, very rarely do you have two. So when I say hive or colony or, there are a number of other ways you can talk about a group of bees. I'm talking for me one stack of boxes, whether it's one box or a super box on top or two brood boxes and then super box, honey boxes. In nature, same thing. One queen, one bunch of comb, right? That's one colony. When these queens start to mature, the old queen leaves with about half of her babies, half of her girls. And her intent is to set up a second home so that now there are two hives, okay? For survivability, all that thing. Also, there's too much competition. They're just not going to make it with two queens. There are a lot of signals going on about that. So the new queen's over here, the old queen's here, and the old queen, the new queen's in the old box, right? And she's growing up, and she learns how to do her job, and she starts laying eggs, and the process continues. So that's how I went from one box to 50 boxes for the most part, is I encouraged them to split, which I can mostly do by feeding them, and a number of other things that are basically not working on getting honey, working on having more bees. And once they have just so many bees, I can literally come up to this box. If I have two boxes on top of each other, and I can take the top box and put it over here, and then make sure that there's some eggs in that one. Probably there are going to be eggs in this one. I'm going to try to move the queen away, just like she does in nature, right? So she's not encouraged to come back. Then these queens are bred, and they will continue. So I do very little work to create two hives, just like, but it emulates the nature's process. I've recently just gone to this one box. So this will be the brood box where the bees grow up. Two boxes just turned out not to really be necessary in this warm environment. Up north, people do it a lot more, probably because as it gets to winter, they die back. They're not breeding as much. Those bees will clump up and stay in one little ball all winter long, and all they have to feed themselves on is the honey that they collected and stored, right? Honey is what they eat, right? It's not for us, it's what they eat. So they're clumped up in a ball and they're staying warm. Bees cooperate by feeding each other. So the bee that's holding on here up by the honey gets the honey and passes it down to the bees below. They don't move around, that takes too much effort, right? So they're conserving energy and working together to stay alive over the winter. They don't have to do that as much here, but there are not as many bees working in the spring. I don't know what else to. I guess I should ask you what you want to know. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes, yes. So I was joking about the golf course in the sky. The boys come out of this every morning and don't have anything to do except go up in the sky and wait for virgin queens to come out of this box. So all summer long, from the very beginning of spring right through to October or November down here, the queens are, new queens are coming out of here. About 6 days after they're born, they leave on a mating run, the queen does. Okay? And she flies up and she finds this congregation in the sky, right? This constellation of boys. And she flies through it, and just to skip the process the way movies do, fade out when they start to kiss, I'm just going to say that she comes back with you have to say that she mates with 30 or 40 different guys. If you're a guy, you don't get to go back to the golf locker room and brag about how you got the queen, because when you detach, it pulls your belly out and you fall to the ground and die. So you're either a virgin boy or dead. So us guys, you don't really want to be the guy. Also though, guys are bred on purpose by the hive when they need them, and not otherwise, okay? So we really are the peripheral sex in all of this. Because unless this queen feels like she needs to have some more bees out there to have her genetics passed on, or for whatever reason she does, her own hive needs, whatever it is. There's certain circumstances where you start to see more boys in there, and that's trouble for us as beekeepers. We don't want that. We want them to all be girls. It's okay that there are a couple guys, but not a lot. But when there are a lot, they're all going to go out and try to mate them. So queen comes back here. She lives about 3 or 4 years, typically. So she can make several hives in her lifetime. So you do get this duplicative process where the 2 turn into 4, turn into 8. They don't all survive. That's why we're not completely overrun by bees. Nature takes its course. But once she comes back, the boys, all they do is come back, walk around the hive, eat dinner, watch television, sit on the lazy boy, and the girls continue to take out the trash and feed them. Also, I should say the queen is very special because she requires constant care. Okay, she can't feed herself, she can't clean herself, she can't really even breed without helper bees there all the time taking care of her and taking care of what she's doing when she puts the eggs in the cell and everything. It's all, the queen is in here her entire life unless she goes and starts another hive somewhere. That's really the only time she's going to come out. She doesn't come and explore. And that's also important for when you rescue bees. People are always like, did you get the queen, or do I have a new queen in here or something? Well, there's no new queen coming in here, right? The queen lives here. So some people are like, well, did you get all the bees? I got the queen. The rest of them, when I leave with my box, like she was talking about, with all the bees flying around in my car, right? When I leave with that box and the queen's in here, the rest of them are orphans now. They're going to find it very hard to even join another hive because bees work on smell. They can see very well. They don't have ears. They do work on vibration a lot. But when they try to join another cell, because of all this attacking I was talking about before, and I didn't talk a lot about it, but bees will, they'll put bees in the front to guard the box. And if other bees come up, especially bees, they test them and see if they're really from this hive. And if they're not from the hive, they won't let them in. Why? Because these bees coming in could be reconnoitering. They could be Chinese bees coming after our TikTok. And if you let them in, you let one in behind there, and now a couple more come in, they can rob the entire hive, clean it out. And it happens a lot. I have one angry set of bees in Miss Elaine's backyard here. She had some boxes, and she and her husband got stung quite a few times when some angry bees from out of nowhere came and wanted to rob their hive. Well, I knew it wasn't my bees because my bees are really nice when they first come here. But you have to say, you buy them really nice. They're bred to be nice. So when I say they're nice, it's not because they're my bees. It's the, the genetics. We're trying to keep diseases down. I didn't talk at all about diseases before. I do want to start taking questions, so someone asks me about diseases if you want. But, we breed them to be nice, to make a lot of honey, to make a lot of bees, right, and to stay healthy. So that genetic engineering brings nice bees to the island initially. This is a harsh environment for bees, just as it is for humans. And over time, they can get a little testier. That's been my experience. It's not just because I mishandle, which sometimes I do, and then they get testy with me forever. They remember me. They're like, oh, you're that guy that messed with us last time. Now I take out my little speaker and play the Grateful Dead. Seriously. And they know who I am. They don't need the Grateful Dead to know that. But I'm trying to create that same environment where I know I'm here to help. I'm going to mess with you a little, but I'm going to take care of your diseases. I'm going to check what you're doing. And then I'm going to rob you of all your honey. Okay. Not so much that they can't survive. But yeah, bees will rob other bees to get the food that they need and bring it back to their place, destroying the other hives. It's just like, Genghis Khan or something. I mean, they just come in and in a couple of hours can completely denude something this big of all the honey that's in here and kill a lot of bees and kill all the brood and just leave you with a devastated hive. The other thing that happens, which is very mysterious, is bees just leave. It's not that mysterious, they just want to live somewhere else. It's not that hard to understand. They like Naples just as much as they like Marco, okay? And they want to live both places, okay. But most of the time, they only take half the bees, and the queen nicely establishes a second colony. Last year especially, for some reason, my bees would just entirely leave and leave a lot of honey behind, which is unusual. Didn't matter if it was in a hot place or a cool place, or by the pool or by the water or in the woods, they just left. And that happened to maybe a quarter to a third of my hives. My current theory is it's mosquito control. And that's another reason I won't put them in people's yards anymore, is that where we live, we're just not willing to live like the Baileys did. That wonderful picture at the Bailey homestead of the people all in black, right, head to toe, about to go into their airlock to brush off the mosquitoes before they go inside from not 100-degree, probably 85-degree weather at the time. But outside all in black. We don't want to live like that again. But we didn't even have air conditioning. They didn't have air conditioning back then. They'd go into that house and they're inside in, you know, a fairly hot house. So, you know, I don't know why they leave, but one major suspect for me is our mosquito control, which we keep the mosquitoes down, we try to keep the midges down, but when you put your environmental hat on, you kill the mosquitoes, you're taking out other things in that wide swath of animals that have to survive to have a vibrant ecology here. It's just the way it's going to be. We have to make that, we are making that choice, and we have to adapt our choice to what we want on this island in the natural environment. We need to be thinking about that when we demand that we get mosquito control over our house, please. Because if the mosquito control comes down and goes in here, it's going to kill a bunch of my bees where they are. But the next morning when they come out to forage, it's going to be on all the plants. That's not just my bees, that's the birds. It's really the fish. It's everything. When we pollute the environment, we're hurting ourselves. And that's the other thing that I'll wrap all this up with, is the idea that bees somehow, we can't live without bees. Well, we sure can. If bees went extinct today, we wouldn't have as many great foods as we do, but only the ones that they pollinate would go away. Bees might not be the only thing that pollinates some of these foods either. So we might not even lose all the foods that we currently use bees to pollinate. We'll lose watermelon, we'll lose some strawberries, that kind of thing. But really, if the bees go extinct, that's our signal that we're about to die. That we've poisoned the environment enough to kill ourselves. Okay? We are in big trouble from what we did if the bees go extinct. But bees really are just that harbinger. They're just that canary in the coal mine. Because we don't need them to survive. We want them to survive. And we should have them in the chain. I don't want to lose any animals or plants or anything. That's what my grandmother instilled in me as an ornithologist, and also some other great experiences that just don't fit into this topic about why I love this environment so much. And before I cry, I think we're doing a great job, and I think there is a balance. You know, you have to choose. If there are bees in your house, you have to choose between your house and the bees. A lot of times they can't coexist. You have a rental, you need the income. You can't have the bees there when the renters come. You can't have bees just living in your house all the time and damaging your house. Is it worth $5,000, $10,000 to get them out there? That's not me, that's the reconstruction. Someone has to come and fix what I pull out of your house, right? Is it worth all that money to save that group of bees? We'll talk about that when it comes up, but we're making a choice, right? We're making an economic and environmental choice all the time here. And we're living in the benefit of that, right? We all get to benefit from that. And we're not trying to bring New York City down here and New Jersey down here. We're trying to live the way you should live on Sanibel, which was here before. We don't, and if anyone is trying to bring New Jersey down, let me know, because we need to talk a little more. Thank you for listening to me. Let's, yeah.
I don't know how you can tell a queen bee.
Yes, that's a great question. The queen bee is demonstrably bigger. And she's shaped differently. She has this big curved abdomen that ends in sort of a point where the eggs come out of her rear, okay? Whereas other bees they have a head and an abdomen for the most part, and they're kind of jointed, they're smaller. The boys are kind of bulky like this. So you can, when you're looking for it, you immediately know. Like if I just put 100 bees
How
down
much
here,
bigger? Double the size?
25%.
Of course.
Enough to know.
Enough to notice. Yeah. And there are some small ones, and they are very hard to see. And when you go in here to try to find them, like they grow the comb from the middle or in a ball, really. And even though these are here, this will have a little bit, the next one will have a little bit less, it grows in a ball. So when I pull this out to try to find the queen first, for wherever I need to find the queen and isolate her, I'm starting right in the middle where I hope to find her before she can scurry away somewhere, right? If I start over here, she's going to scurry over there and I'm not even going to find her. She's hard to find because she's surrounded by all these other bees. And a lot of times I'll pick up this one, she's right here, but then she's not when I go look in the next one,
So you
right?
pick it up with your finger.
Yeah, you catch them just by the wings or even by the abdomen, and you're not going to crush her. I mean, you could. I've never killed a bee just with my fingers, a queen. Sometimes I kill bees. Sorry, it happens.
How many species of bees do we have on the island?
I don't know. The dominant species is this one. Do you know the Latin name for these? Apis mellifera. So, you don't have to memorize that. But the Italian honeybee is one of about 4 species of honeybee is it species or class? It's species, right? So there aren't that many honeybees. There are thousands of bees, wasps, hornets, all of these flying insects that kind of come under the umbrella of bee. And then hornets and wasps we don't think of as bees, right? But things that are a lot closer to honeybees are really bees, and there are really thousands of species of those, but they don't produce honey. And so we haven't bred them. But really, the reason we have billions and billions of bees, and I'm not worried about their extinction, is because we have a lot of bees under management. We really do. So you'd have to have a widespread disaster to get rid of just honeybees, right? There is some talk about honeybees displacing native bees out of an environment where there's not enough food. And I think that it's theoretical. It's something that humans have come up with. But think about New York, where they're putting these on rooftops, and there's a somewhat limited supply of food within the range of where they're going to go. Do I want to eat honey from the rooftop of New York when I can come to Sanibel and get this instead? No, thank you. No, thank you. Because when we talk about allergies and that kind of thing, it's the naturopathic, homeopathic part of this, where you have some of the grit, some of the flour, some of the stuff that's not really honey, it's not sugar in here. That's what keeps this allergies down, right? If it works. I'm not trying to make a medical claim, right? I'm just saying that the reason this is local and good local and tastes like Sanibel is that it's the little things. It's not the sugars, right? So I don't want to eat New York honey, but the idea is that all these bees that they're putting on rooftops, the smaller species of native bees that are around there don't have enough to eat and might be being pushed out. I think that's highly improbable, but I understand the argument, and someone's got to keep testing that idea. Whenever we breed large populations for our own sake, like cattle or horses or pigs, we're going to have that kind of impact on our environment. So we have all kinds of honeybees, and we don't pay much attention to other important species that we might want to pay attention to.
Brad, I've heard that bees are attracted to a particular color. Is that true or not?
What do you guys think? Particular? Here we have we have 2 very important supplies. One is very white. It's the sea grape, very clear and transparent. It makes just this terrific honey, right? And this is actually not even as clear as It could be, but it's quite clear. And then this has a lot more mangrove in it. Okay? Right? Now, I need someone to teach me about plants here. Several of you could do this. But there's one mangrove, the one that's in the salt flats, and the one that's on the land produce the best honey, and the one that's out in the water doesn't. So it's red, white, black. I don't know what order they're in. Does someone know the order? Just offhand? So 3 kinds of mangroves on the island, and 2 of them the bees make honey out of them. Primarily, I think, probably black, and the one that's on land most. In between that, so mangrove blooms are different colors, white, red, black. So I don't know if there's a specific. They have very good eyes, but you see them on purple flowers and yellow flowers, and when they come in with pollen on them, that pollen can either be sea grape white or dark orange and anything in between. So they're eating a lot of different plants. One other thing people always ask me, they get a hive on their property or they like bees and they say, what plant can I put in my garden? Okay. Anything, just plant things, okay? Even milkweed, which is for butterflies, right? Put it in there. It attracts nature, and bees like nature. You can't feed a hive of bees from your own backyard. They go to about 2 miles to forage, right? A circle diameter, radius 2 miles. So they need a lot of sources. And there's so much to tell you that I can't tell you about how they find it and how they tell other bees where it is. But they do a little dance. And they point to the sources and go out and get it.
I think we could keep you here all day, Brad. This is like the first 5 hours of a course.
I will stay though.
Okay.
If you want to keep sitting or talking or listening to questions.
Okay.
But let's do this, yeah.
Okay, we will do.
So let somebody go.
We will go for this, and then if people need to go, Brad will answer questions. He says he has honey that he still can purchase from him if he wants. Okay. Before I draw this, could we hear a really big round? You were not really coherent. I didn't realize we had a man on a mission that is compatible with everything we believe about Sanibel. So thank you for that.
Well, and I really do appreciate that in all of you, because the people that I do actually know in here do share my enthusiasm and the passion for keeping Sanibel in a way that we can all live here. Not people, but all, everything that lives here.
Okay, drum roll. Okay, first one is number 31. Okay. And the second one is 14.
The honey that I have here, you can find my honey as long as there are supplies available. I'm about to run out of 2024 honey. Really all I have left at my house is granulated honey. Honey that's granulated is one proof that you got really good raw unfiltered honey. It's never been heated, it's not fake honey or anything else, it's real honey. The problem with granulated honey is it's granulated and it doesn't really look as good on the shelf. It's just as good to eat. I mean, you fish out some of the granulated honey at...
I had it.
Okay, watch that bubble up. So this is kind of granulated. You fish that out with a knife, and that's better, I think, on your peanut butter. It's like soft rock candy. I love it. Some people don't. And I have some bottles that have really gone completely granulated. And so instead of $15, I'll sell them to you for 10. The ones that are just like this, that's pretty natural. That's still $15, sorry. But you know, it's okay to buy nice thick honey like this, right? Even if it's not the best, it doesn't look like ketchup on the shelf. It's not exactly the same as every other.
How long can we keep it? Because I have some in my cupboard in the back.
You can keep it ever. It does not rot. Beautiful thing. The bees do not cap over the comb that they put the honey in. They grow it out like a 1/4 inch or so, and they don't cap it until they flap their wings at it so much that the water content is below 18% by volume. So we can't do that. I put out a pan of honey and run a fan over there with no humidity. It does not dry out, right? I never really tried that, but I've heard. But the point is, these little guys, girls, they dry it out. And once it's below 18%, they cap it with wax. And that wax capped cell will go, they found honey in Egyptian tombs that is granulated. You have to heat it up to get it back to honey, but it's still honey, it has not rotted. The rot, it means you have like 30% water or something in there.
Do you sell comb honey?
No, it's so hard to make. There's no, I'll sell you a little bit of comb if I can find it, just one-off kind of thing, but you can't really, it's so much work. I've been doing this on my own. I can't afford to pay someone and have any of this worked out. So it's me against the machine, you know. And I use all the comb for beeswax products and to wax new comb. So when these come to you in the mail, they're supposed to have a cover of wax on them, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Doesn't matter what the advertisement says. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I heat up some of the wax that I've scraped off of these when I make the honey, and roll it onto these to give the bees a head start in the springtime. In terms of buying this, you can buy it at the pack and ship. It's $15 from my back door. The retail places mark it up. Pack and ship, it's $22. Melissa at this community bank has it on her desk for $15. And so we love her for that. And everybody at the bank totally supports the bees on the island. Not just me, but the bees, and it's really great. They're a terrific group of people. And then the bubble room, cake room, whatever they call it, second. So they have this up there too, and they've marked it up. And now the Captiva Curio, which is down by the bridge, it's not run Captiva at all. It's just run by women who live on Captiva. But that Curio shop has it marked up even more, and it still sells. People will buy it for $28. It turns out. I keep it at 15 because it's. I gotta make something back. But this is really good honey, and I don't say that. I'm just saying what people say, really. I mean, I love it. I'll eat any color, granulated, not, and I do all the time. I think you have to choose between kind of a lighter honey and a darker honey. And, you know, the darker honeys are thicker, more molasses.
Okay,
So,
well,
anyway.
Maria, we will allow some time for folks to purchase this if
Obviously,
you
I
want.
can talk.
Thank you all.